Did it ask you permission?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Not the most tech savvy here for everyone wondering. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. All right, hi everyone. My name is Eric Garter. I was in a Zoom call yesterday. Did it change my name? Oh no, it's good. Okay.
No, it's good.
I'm one of the immigration coordinators at OIA. I've been in this position for 4.5 years now. It is peak OPT season, so it's great to have everyone here. I'm sure you have lots of questions. We will keep you muted for now. And just be sure to put in your questions in the chat function as we go along. My colleague Jennifer will monitor that and we'll answer them throughout. Jennifer, if you want to introduce yourself too.
Mm-hmm. So hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Bach and I'm one of the OIA.
And then Jennifer, you're able to keep adding, right, as I go along?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And just as a reminder, feel free to put your questions in the chat function as we go along. All right, so I'll share my screen. You all will probably see my cat at some point across the screen. Hopefully it doesn't turn off my computer as I'm presenting. Can you see it okay, Jennifer?
Mm-hmm. I see it.
All right, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is on optional practical training, OPT. There we go. So what is OPT? It is defined as temporary employment for practical training directly related to the student's major area of study. Most of you in the audience today are probably getting ready to graduate this semester and probably thinking about work after graduation here in the US. Go. So there's two types of OPT, really. There's pre-completion OPT and post-completion. There's also a few benefits that we'll discuss towards the end, the OPT STEM extension, as well as the CAP-GAP extension. We'll just breeze over those towards the end. And today's presentation is mostly on post-completion OPT. All right, so in order to be eligible, you have to be in lawful F1 status and must have been enrolled in a full course of study for at least 1 academic year. So what that means is 1 autumn and 1 spring semester at least. All right, must not have been previously authorized for 12 months of OPT at the current or higher degree level. So basically what that means is sometimes we'll have a student who did a master's 5 years ago, comes to OSU and completes a second master's. If that individual did an OPT at the master's level 5 years ago, for example, they wouldn't be eligible for OPT again for the master's if they already did the full 12 months of post-completion OPT. Sometimes we also have some PhD students who come back and do a master's a few years later. If you already did OPT at that higher degree level, you wouldn't be eligible at the lower one. You have to kind of go in order, so bachelor's, master's, PhD. The next point, must not have engaged in more than 12 months of full-time CPT. So keep in mind this only pertains to full-time CPT, so not part-time. Most students don't run into this issue. Sometimes it's post-candidacy students who might have worked on full-time CPT quite often, but if you have any questions about that, let us know. Okay, so the work must be directly related to your major field of study. If you're an undergraduate student graduating with 2 majors, for example, this semester, the work can be based on either one of those. You can have a job in one major, job in another. Just keep in mind, it's not based on your minor. It can only be based on the major field of study. The work should total at least 20 hours per week. So you can have multiple jobs. One job be 10 hours, another job be 10. You can have one job that is 40 hours per week, whatever you want to do as long as you're hitting that 20 hours per week in total. For post-completion OPT, it can be paid, unpaid, or even a volunteer experience. Just keep in mind though, even for the unpaid or the volunteering, still has to be directly related to your major. And also, you should still wait for the OPT authorization to come through before you begin any paid or unpaid position. Especially paid. All right, so when you apply for post-completion OPT, you are applying for a 12-month work authorization first. For all my STEM majors out there, if you do have hopes for applying for the STEM OPT in the future, just keep in mind it is a separate application. So you first have to apply for the post-completion OPT first. You don't apply for the full, I've got 36 months in total. Sorry, I had to do math there. 12 times 3. You're only applying for the first 12 months first. You can remain in the US and maintain status while the OPT application is pending. So let's say you graduate, your 60-day grace period is ending. So long as your application is pending with US Immigration, USCIS, it's totally fine to remain in the US. And that last part is probably the most important. Just please make sure you don't begin any physical work after you graduate until you receive the EAD card in the mail and you're within the dates listed on the card. All right, this next part is also pretty important. It is very important that you do not exceed 90 days of unemployment during your 12 months of post-completion OPT. So for example, let's say you begin on December 1st, like your EAD card start date is December 1st. Just keep in mind, it's not the first 90 days of your OPT. It's cumulative, so it goes through the whole 12 months of your post-completion OPT authorization. In your SEVP portal, there is a 90-day counter. We actually don't see that, only the student does. So it should tell you the amount that you have remaining. If it doesn't, though, we definitely can see it on our end. Feel free to email us and we're happy to give you that number of remaining days. This next part is also pretty important. If you apply for OPT and then later decide that you don't want to continue with it, you want to stop working early and go back to your home country, or you don't wish to continue with applying at all, reach out to us so we know. Even if you depart the US, your F1 record would stay in active status and it would just look like you're gaining days of unemployment. So just let us know if you don't wish to continue. We'll complete your record just so we know that you've gone home. Okay, so this is basically just, there was, in 2018, there was a policy memorandum that came out, the unlawful presence policy, basically just stating that, if you go over your days of unemployment, basically that it's not good and that you accrue days of unlawful presence. The reason we put the big X here is that there is a court injunction on it, so it's not really in effect. We do like to keep this slide there though in case that injunction ever goes away. Basically just as a reminder that it's super important not to exceed that 90 days of unemployment. Okay, so the earliest you can apply for post-completion OPT is 90 days before your anticipated program end date. And you have through your 60-day grace period to apply also. However, we don't really recommend waiting until the very last minute, just because it does take around 3 to 4 months to get approved for OPT. So a lot of students do think that they have to wait until they get a job offer to apply, which is not the case for post-completion. You're simply just applying for the work authorization itself. So we recommend applying as soon as you can. So for summer, we're actually getting ready. Oh no, that one already ended. Excuse me. Autumn just recently opened towards the end of September. So if you're graduating this semester, we recommend submitting that application soon. All right, so the first step in the process is submitting the C3B post-completion OPT application form. It is on our website. Just make sure you're looking at the post-completion form and not pre-completion. We do need your academic advisor signature first on it, on page 2, before we can accept it. Due to the circumstances, digital signatures are more than okay. That's totally fine. We know a lot of your academic advisors are working remotely from home, and maybe you're living in a different state as well, so that's totally fine. You can just email it to us, or if you work with a particular advisor, usually directly to them. We are happy to look over your documents before you mail them out. If you want to email those to us, or if you want to schedule a Zoom appointment, you can share your screen. We're happy to go through it with you. So this is what the form looks like. Basically just general information. Make sure you check which box you are. If you're just graduating for autumn semester, just make sure you don't have to check any of these boxes if they do not pertain to you. I know it can be a little confusing. We get this question quite often. So if you're just graduating autumn semester, you just have to check the autumn box, put 2020. We'll go through the different graduate options in a few slides though. Page 2, this is where your academic advisor will sign. All right, so the requested start date. This is right here, that first red box. We'll go through that really quick. This is the date that you wish to basically begin your OPT employment. Again, it's just a request. It's not an official date. The earlier you apply for OPT, the higher chance you have of getting that date. So that's why we usually recommend applying early. If you have a job offer already lined up for after graduation, we recommend putting that date. Do we have a slide after this? We do, okay. So basically, what I always tell students is that some students want to begin working right away after graduation, which is great. You can choose an earlier start date within your 60-day grace period. So the date has to come from within your 60-day grace period. Some students want more time to job search, job interview, because they don't want their days of unemployment to go up sooner than someone who chose an earlier date. So really just choose it based on how you plan to begin working. If you need more time to job search and job interview, that's usually what I tell students. This last part though is really important. Once you choose a date and you mail your documents to US Immigration, we can't unfortunately change that date for you. So you'll just have to be in touch with your employer. If they ever email you saying, hey, can you begin work earlier? Just let them know like, hey, this is the date that I requested. This is when I submitted my application to USCIS. Can we choose a start date around that time, kind of thing. Jennifer, do you have anything to add in that regard?
No, not really. That's pretty straightforward.
Okay, sounds good. And I believe, yes, so for undergrads, you'll only get that commencement date as your program end date. So let's say right now on your I-20, it says May 9th, 2021 for spring 2021, but you're graduating this semester. Once you submit your OPT application, we'll shorten your program end date to this semester's end date, which as of right now is December 20th, 2020. Graduate students, though, you have a bit more leeway. So you can do the commencement date if you are graduating at the commencement, the regular commencement. However, there's also the academic recognized end of semester option. I know I don't really like the name of this because it sounds like you're graduating at the end of the semester. But what the end of semester option is that you have a bit more time to finish your thesis or dissertation. You have through the business day before the next semester is set to begin. So I believe next semester begins on January 11th. It's a Monday. So the end of semester deadline would be that Friday before, which is the 8th, January 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Yes. So technically you can apply for OPT based on that if you're graduating based on the end of semester option. There is also the defense date option. We only usually have a handful of students that choose this. If you choose to apply for OPT based on your defense date, keep in mind we do need an additional letter from your academic advisor on letterhead, basically stating when your defense is scheduled for. The reason that we don't typically recommend this for graduate students sometimes is if you're on a GA appointment, for example. Let's say your defense date is scheduled for November 1st and you want to apply for OPT 90 days before November 1st. Because it typically takes around 3 to 4 months to get approved for OPT, we can't guarantee that you'll be approved by that program start date. So if you're a GA for the autumn semester, and then we had shortened your program end date to November 1st, you can't legally keep working as a GA if after that point the OPT application is still pending. So that's where it gets a little tricky. Some students do proceed though with that option if they're not a GA, but if you have any questions about that, let us know, send us an email, we're happy to help. All right, so once you submit that application to us via email, we should respond within 3 to 5 business days at the latest. We're usually pretty quick on our turnaround. And then once we process the initial I-20 for you, we'll send you an email with a full list of instructions on next steps. So which documents to mail to US Immigration, the timeline of when you have to get the documents there. You do have 30 days to get the documents there if you're applying now. The closer you have to your grace period, though, that's when the time kind of gets shorter. And then we'll also give you an I-765 template so you can kind of go through and make sure your form I-765 looks good. And again, we're happy to check it over for you via email or via Zoom, as well as the USCIS address list so you know where to mail everything. All right, so now we'll go through the different application forms. If you want to take notes on these different forms, again, this will be available for the recording on our website if you want to come back and reference it. The first form that we'll go through is the G1145. It is an optional form, but it is extremely recommended. I'm sure Jennifer would agree. Basically, it's just your name, phone number, and email. US Immigration will text or email you when they get your application. So it's kind of like it puts your mind at ease. You know that they have it and that it wasn't lost in the mail. So I usually recommend it. But a lot of students see optional and they're like, I do not want to do it. I usually just recommend it for that reason. So this disclaimer before we get into the I-765 is that USCIS typically updates the I-765 every few months or so. So we always recommend that you go directly to the website, this website right here, for the most up-to-date I-765. Sometimes you'll have one printed out and then, you know, you went to an OPT workshop in person, you know, back in the day, pre-COVID, and you had a form, but that might no longer be acceptable. So just always go to the website for the most up-to-date one. All right, so we'll go page by page on this if you do want to take notes. Please make sure you check that very first box. And I think we have right here. So the initial permission to accept employment. Jennifer, can you see my mouse moving around?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, it's clear.
So, perfect. So the initial permission to accept employment box, please make sure you check that. If you do everything correct with your OPT application, but forget this one little box, they will probably reject the application. You'll have to start all over, which gets a little gross. So just make sure about that. Next down here, you put your name. In all the blank boxes, we do recommend that you put N/A. So probably all over here. You can do a mix of typing, writing in pen. Just please make sure it's a black ink pen if you do use pen, and that it's extremely legible to see, that it doesn't smear or something, things like that. If we'll go over to here, page 2, the in care of name is only needed if you plan on using somebody else's name for when USCIS, let's say, approves you and mails your EAD card. That's like if you wanted to have your EAD card sent to like a friend or family member here in the US because you think that you're moving. So basically the address right here is where you want your document, like your EAD card, to be mailed to if you're approved. Some students don't know where they're going to be after they graduate. You know, they might job interview and get a job out in California. They don't know. Their lease is coming up after graduation. So you can use a friend or family member right here if you know that they are not moving. So if you want to do that option, you would put your friend or family member's name here, their address, and for number 6, it says, is this your current mailing address? You would say no, because it's someone else's, and you would put your current address here. Please make sure that your address is updated in Buckeye Link, just so we have accurate information in your F1 record. If you are not moving and you want your EAD card mailed directly to you, you don't have to put it in care of name. You can put N/A, and then you would just put your own address right there. Number 6 says, is this your mailing address? You would say, yes, this is mine. And then you would just put N/A for number 7. Oh, so sorry. Here we go. If you have ever done OPT before, for number 8, you would put in the USCIS number on your previous EAD card. If you have any questions about that, let us know. I know it's a little confusing. If you've never done OPT before, though, just put N/A for number 8. And usually for number 9. I still have never had a student have this account number, to be honest. I don't know if you have, Jennifer.
No, I haven't. I mean, a student will only have that if they're filing online.
Oh,
But for
okay.
SCIS, yeah,
All right, so
it doesn't apply.
this one will most likely be N/A as well. 10, marital status. These are all pretty straightforward. Number 12, have you ever previously filed for the I-765? This is basically asking, have you ever applied for OPT in the past? So either check yes or no. 13, has the Social Security Administration ever issued you a Social Security card, an SSN? If you do have one, please check yes, provide the number, say no, I do not want a Social Security card, because you already have one, you don't want to apply for another one. If you answer like that, you would actually skip down to number 18, because you don't have to answer number 15. You can put N/A for 16 and 17. If you don't have an SSN though, you would check you check no, I do not have an SSN. You would leave this blank. 14 says, do you want a Social Security card? You would say yes. Number 15, you would check yes, that you consent, and you put your family's name here. And then you do 18. Typically, I would say that SSN arrives in the mail usually like a week or two after the EAD card, or sometimes before. They usually don't ever arrive together. Sometimes they do, but this is a way to get your SSN if you've never had it before. Any questions on that so far? All right, sounds good.
Just general questions we have here.
All right, we'll keep going. The next page, page 3, just general information about where you were born, your date of birth. Please make sure it goes month, day, year. Your I-94, we can probably skip ahead really quick. The I-94, so sorry, it looks like this. It's an electronic form that you get from this website. If you have not entered the country since 2013, for example, or if you drove across the border, let's say from Canada or Mexico, you might have a paper one. So this is where the 11-digit number is that you put on your I-765. We'll go back really quick. That is where you would put it right here. If you have trouble pulling your I-94, please let us know. Sometimes that does happen if your name changes, or sometimes we see some issues with the way the name is written on someone's passport from Malaysia or Vietnam. We're happy to help you pull that. Passport number, please make sure it's your most recent passport. Even if you enter the country in a different passport, please make sure it's the number of the most recent one. Your passport must always be valid at least 6 months into the future at all times. 21C, if you have a travel document, if you know you do, you can put it in. Probably 99% of students don't, so you can put N/A. Country that issued your passport, the country that says, the country on your passport. The expiration date of the passport. Date of last arrival, that is going to be the date on your I-94. If you notice that that date is not correct, please let us know. We can actually go in and see in your record when your last date was, so we can see if there's any issue. Place of your last arrival, keep in mind that this won't be Columbus. We do usually get students that put Columbus, but most of the time it's going to be one of the major airports in the US, and there's also places outside of the US. So like, for example, Toronto is one of them, Ireland, the Nassau, Bahamas, UAE. So it could be a place technically outside. 24 and 25, the last time you entered was most likely an F1 status. If you did change status within the US though, it might be a different status. So if you have any questions about that, let us know. CVIS ID number, straightforward. 27, please make sure it is little c, 3, capital B. Just make sure if you're in a STEM field, you're not applying for STEM now, you would apply for post-completion OPT first, so it would be C3B. And everything else on that page would be N/A. This is the old form. The new form looks a little bit different, but the content is all still the same. So if you have any questions, let us know, but the content is still exactly the same. It's just kind of placed differently. Make sure you check the box over here that you can read and understand English, put your phone number, email. Right here, make sure that you hand sign only. So like in a black ink pen. Do not do a digital signature. They will not accept it. I usually recommend that students only hand sign here. The interpreter information, N/A, because no one else is filling it out for you. So you can just do N/A in the interpreter sections. Page 7 is where things get kind of, everyone has a different page 7, basically. If you have done CPT before, if you have ever had a previous immigration record, so like a different F1 record, you were a J1 exchange student in the past, or if you've done OPT in the past, this is where you would list all that information. We're happy to help you with that too if you want to email us or schedule a Zoom appointment just to make sure everything looks good. But if none of that applies to you, you basically just put your name and N/A on all those D lines. So like, for example, we'll go through it. If you've done CPT before, the code is going to be 3227. You would put your CVIS ID number, the degree level that you did the CPT, whether it was part-time or full-time, and then the dates of the CPT. Some students have done, like 10 CPTs before, so we do recommend that you list all of them. No need to memorize this all. Now, when we email you the OPT approval email, we'll include the template for you. And then again, we're happy to check everything over for you. If you've done OPT before, that code is 2212. You would list the CVIS ID you did the OPT under, what level, full-time, and then the dates on your EAD card. You might have did CPT as well. So everyone kind of has a different page 7 is what we're stating. If you've ever had a previous CVIS ID number, 3226, you just list that ID and what level it was. So again, feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. All right, back to the I-94. Again, if you have trouble pulling it, let us know. We do also have to have you make a copy of your most recent entry stamp into the US. If you cross the border from Canada, like you drove over, or from Mexico, or what's the other example? Sometimes if you, Miami does not stamp anymore. So sometimes you won't get a stamp in one of those situations. If that pertains to you, let us know. We usually recommend that you write a quick letter, basically just stating like, please refer to my travel history, which you can find your travel history on this I-94 website. I did not get a stamp when I entered due to this reason, but you should have a stamp in your passport. If you have the paper one, please make sure you make a copy of both the front and the back. All right, passport, just the passport bio page, just the picture page. Students from India, I usually recommend that you make a copy of the back page as well. For students who have multiple passports, we do get this question a lot. Should I include all passports? If you do feel more comfortable doing that, like if you entered the country on your previous passport and then renewed in the US, you can, but please do make sure your most recent is stapled on top. Just because we always get nervous if you put an expired one on top, they're gonna see that and immediately, like reject it, deny it, which we don't wanna see happen. So just make sure the most recent is on top. I20 copies. I would say it's most important if you've ever done CPT before to include those CPT I20s. But all of the all the I20 copies of your current degree level is what you should include. Please make sure they are signed and dated down here at the bottom before you make the copy of page 1 and 2. If you were with us back when it was the old version of the I20, it would actually be pages 1 and 3. So like if you have the barcode version, it would be page 1 and 3. If you have the new version that looks like this, it's page 1 and 2. This is just a reminder that your documents have to arrive to USCIS within 30 days of your OPT I-20 issuance date.
So Eric, we have a question about passport expiration. So someone is asking, my passport will expire June 2021. Can I use it to apply for OPT?
So it's still more than 6 months out. I would say that's fine. If you're getting ready to renew though, if it's still pending months from now, Just keep us updated if you do renew it. Send us a copy of that, the passport bio page, but I would say June 2021 is okay. All right, 2 photographs, 2 inches by 2 inches also have to be included. We do recommend that if you get them taken at like CVS, Walgreens, I think the FedEx on High Street is a good place also. Wear dark colors just because it is a white background. Make sure there's no shadows really and that it's clear. We do recommend you write your name and I-94 number lightly on the back. Usually in pencil is what we recommend. Pen might bleed through too much. And we usually do recommend that they're recent photos within the past, or yeah, the most recent 30 days. We don't recommend using, the same photo as your passport or your visa. Just for compliance purposes, they want to see that it's a recent photo. If you've done OPT in the past, just make sure to include a copy of that. All right, the check, money order, or the credit card form. I personally recommend submitting a check or a money order. We've seen some issue with the credit card form, and we also just don't want you mailing out your credit card information in the event that it were to ever get lost in the mail. But sometimes a USCIS officer will enter your credit card information in wrong. They immediately shred the form, and then there's no way to get it back if they did it incorrectly, unfortunately. So we usually recommend the check or the money order. I will say if you do a check, they do the money first as like the first step in the process. So you can actually see it taken out of your account pretty quickly after you submit it. So that's usually a good way to go. Please make sure it's made out to the US Department of Homeland Security for $410 and you sign. Please make sure you do not submit physical dollar bills. They will not accept it, and only do one form of payment. So that means like don't do one check for 205 and then a money order for 205. Just make sure it's all one form of payment. As you all might have heard, it was supposed to go up to 550 on October 2nd, as well as the I forgot to mention this, so sorry. The I-765 form was supposed to change also to an October 2nd date. But that was actually, there was an injunction on that as well. So the fee is actually remaining the same for now at $410, which is good. I would say when you're filling out the I-765, make sure at the bottom of the page there's a date. Make sure it says August 25th, 2020. Do not do one that says October 2nd, 2020. That, as of now, has not gone into effect. It's on hold. I don't know what will happen if you use that one. You might get rejected. We haven't seen any yet, but if you have questions, let us know. And if it does change in the future, we will always let students know so you're aware. Oops. Okay, so if let me go back to this really quickly. Whichever address you put here, so for number 5, specifically whichever state you wrote, that is where you will follow when you get ready to mail your documents to US Immigration. If you put your best friend's address and they live in Massachusetts, you're actually going to mail it to one of these 2 addresses. You can either mail it through US Postal Service or use one of these express mail carriers. But if you put your own address in Ohio for number 5, it would actually be the Phoenix, Arizona locations. I personally usually recommend the FedEx, UPS, or DHL because you get a tracking number as opposed to the option, like the cheapest option with US Postal Service, you don't get it. I think with the Express US Postal Service, they might give it to you, but just make sure you're sending it to the right place. And we also include that in our email to you, the list of addresses. All right, so once your documents arrive to US Immigration, it'll take around 3 to 4 months to get approved. If you were to ever get a rejection notice, a denial notice, which are not super common, or if you get a request for evidence in the mail, please let us know right away. We're happy to help you with that. Typically, we don't see too many issues though. When you're approved, you'll get an email about concerning how to set up your SEVP portal. And I think that's the next slide. Yes. So you won't actually get access to your portal until your OPT start date. So if you get your EAD card, let's say 2 weeks before your OPT start date, keep in mind you won't get that access until your actual start date. So this is where you're going to report your address when you're on OPT, update your employer information, things like that. So it's going to be this email that sends you an email. It looks like a spam email, and I wish they chose a different email address, but we promise it is a real email address that you should click on to set up your portal. If you lose access for whatever reason, we actually can help you reset it. So just feel free to reach out to us. If you don't log in for 45 days, it basically, cuts you out, and then we have to unlock it for you. But this is how you'll report your employment. If you go to our website under post-completion OPT, maintaining status, that's where you get the full list of directions when that time comes. Basically, just to sum this all up, it's a lot of words. There's a 90-day counter in there that you can see. Please make sure that all employment is directly related to your major. You actually have to type out how it's related. So just be sure to be as specific as possible. Don't be very vague. And then if you ever change employers, you can also add in the job end date, add a new employer, different things like that. We just don't want you to delete employment ever if you worked somewhere. So keep in mind another thing. Once you update your employer information in the portal, we actually don't get updated. There is a next step. It's the OAA OPT reporting form. I don't know if we include it here. If you don't complete that OAA OPT reporting form on our website, we won't know that you updated your employer information. You do have to get a new I20 every time you add an employer. So just always reach out to our office when you make updates in the portal. I guess I can just put it that way. Again, please make sure there's a section in there that you have to explain how it's related to your major. Just be as specific as possible. Again, we'll process that I-20 for you. We'll mail it out. Even if you're living out in like California and working, we're happy to mail things out to you. You don't always have to come back to Columbus. We're happy to do things remotely. If your name changes, for example, your address changes, please keep us updated. You'll change your address in the SEVP portal. Yeah, that's about that. All right, traveling while on OPT. This is usually a big question. Traveling is a little bit different when you're on OPT because you're no longer a student some of the time. Travel signatures will only be valid for 6 months on OPT, not 12 anymore. So just make sure to get that updated if need be. Your passport should still be valid at least 6 months into the future. You're still going to be on an F1 visa because OPT is a benefit of the F1 visa. Sometimes students think it's an OPT visa, but it's really an F1 visa, and then OPT is the benefit. Make sure you do have the EAD card. Sometimes while it's pending, we do say it's a little bit risky to travel while your OPT is pending. If you only have the receipt notice, basically, if you ever were to get like a request for evidence, but you're outside the country for a few weeks and you don't respond to that, that's where it gets a little tricky. So if someone could check the mail for you while you're away, different things like that. But also traveling right now is a little bit difficult anyway with COVID. If you have any questions about traveling though, let us know. And we do recommend that you have a job offer letter for when you return. Even if it's a volunteer experience, if the volunteer agency could, provide a letter for you just for your travel and reentry purposes, that's usually great. And another thing to mention, I forgot, if you plan to work for a staffing agency on-site at another company while on OPT, please let us know, just because the way we report that's a little different. We have to mention both companies in your record. All right, so we're nearing the end of our OPT presentation. I know it's super long, I'm so sorry. Trying to make this a little fun. There's different options after your OPT ends. You can apply for STEM if you wish to do so, if you're in a STEM field. CapGap we'll get into for H-1B purposes. If you want to begin a new degree program elsewhere, we can help transfer your immigration record out. Change a level means you start a new program here at OSU, or if you change to H-1B. There is a 60-day grace period at the end of your OPT period, so you do get that time to depart. just keep in mind, if you exceed the 90 days of unemployment, there's no grace period at that point. We do just recommend departing as soon as you can if you exceed the 90 days. All right, there's just a few quick, we know everyone's not a STEM student, so we'll kind of just talk about this a little bit. The STEM extension is a 24-month extension. So first is post-completion 12 months, STEM's an additional 24. It's a separate application process. We're happy to help you via email when you're working out in California or wherever with the documentation needed. Basically, just really quick, the earliest you can apply is 90 days before your post-completion OPT period is set to end. You shouldn't have exceeded 90 days of unemployment. You should be in a STEM field. Keep in mind the employer has to be enrolled in the E-Verify system. You won't get approved if they are not. You do have to complete a form called an I-983 with the employer and state how the job is directly related to your major. This is something the DSOs, so like Jennifer and myself, we actually have to approve before we can add it to your record. So sometimes it's a bunch of back and forth edits needed from you. And just keep in mind, you don't have 3-year grace period to apply for OPT. You only have that 90-day period. So it's a little bit different in the timeline. And then cap gap, cap gap is typically for spring graduates and summer graduates a little bit. Basically, if your OPT ends within the period of April 1st and September 30th, I believe it is. Oh, it says it right here. It's a point. You could be eligible for the cap gap extension if your company applies for the H-1B for you. But again, this typically only applies to the spring and summer graduates. For autumn graduates, it gets a little tricky. It could be an extension of stay and not work. If this were ever to apply for you, usually your H-1B employer, the immigration attorney would have you reach out to us to talk about cap gap. And I believe that is it. So if you have any questions, again, we're available by email always, set up a Zoom appointment. And now we'll head over and take some questions that you guys have.
Yeah, let's see here. So we had several questions about travel while on OPT.
Okay.
And I think you answered those. I'm just going to go to the general questions we had at the start. So we have one, I'm currently on CPT for my internship. If I apply for OPT now and it gets approved before my CPT ends, how would that work?
So basically, post-completion OPT is a post-program end date. So if you're graduating this semester, for example, like at the regular commencement, the latest you can work on CPT is through that very last date of the semester, so December 20th. And then the earliest you can begin OPT isn't until December 21st. So really, you wouldn't be working on CPT and OPT at the same time because they kind of, one ends and then the other one starts. That makes sense.
And I'm just going to add that you can only work on the dates listed on the card. So you cannot start working until the start date on your EAD. Okay, look at the second question here. So was the OPT policy changed based on the new policy?
So like the recent October 2nd policy?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what the student means. It's not really
so basically, so yeah, there was going to be a new I-765 and a fee increase. And we had prepared, we told students that was going into effect. And then kind of at the last minute, the court put an injunction on it and put it on hold. So I mean, that's good news because it's a lot cheaper. Not saying it's cheap in general, but it's less money. So as of right now, everything's staying the same. Use the current I-765 on the website. It should be dated August 25th and not October 2nd. And then the fee right now is $410. If it were to change though, we will let students know as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's see. So we have another question about the policy change that says, how would the limitation of the 60-day grace period shortened to 30 days affect this?
So we are closely monitoring that policy as well. For right now, it's still the 60-day grace period. So you do have through your 60-day grace period to apply. if that were to get shortened to 30 days, we would have to get updated guidance from US Immigration concerning OPT. So we would definitely outline all the changes and let students know via email what's going on. I will let everyone know that we are strong in advocacy against this policy that the US government wants to put out. We are staunchly against it. I don't know if I've ever used the word staunch before, but it felt right. So yeah, we are reaching out to our local representatives in the government to ask for their guidance and to help not put this through.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next question is, I have more than one I-20 forms due to CPT. Do I need to submit all of them or just the most recent one?
You said I-20?
Yeah, CPT I-20s.
Okay, so when you apply for OPT, make sure to submit copies of all your current degree level I-20s. So even if you did multiple CPTs at this degree level, it'd be all those CPT I-20s. Make sure, again, they're all signed and dated at the bottom before you make the copy of page 1 and 2.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking over the questions here. Okay. Another question is, what if you're applying next year? What's the limit for applying if my F1 visa ends in 2021 and my program in May? That's not really clear.
Oh no, I think I get it. So, so you can have an expired F1 visa and still legally remain in the US, so long as you're maintaining your status. So let's say you're graduating this semester, for example, and your visa's already expired. That is totally fine. As long as you don't depart, for example, you can still apply for OPT. We've had students whose visas expired years ago and they've done post-completion OPT, STEM OPT, and just have never left the US really, and they've continued to work. So that's totally fine. Although I would encourage you to go home and see family at some point. They might miss you.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
So the last one here is, how would the new rule proposed by DHS to eliminate DS affect the OPT application?
So I don't think the new rule really specified anything about OPT at this point. It's mostly just about, there would be no DS and there would just be like a 4-year timeline to complete the degree. It wasn't really specific to OPT really.
And hopefully it doesn't go into effect. So
Yeah.
I don't think students should be worried about that at this time.
I know that changes to OPT they've been trying to make changes, but usually as you see these court injunctions go into effect, usually right as changes try and go into effect. So I don't know, it can get a bit messy. But we'll always update you as soon as possible if there's any updates. I promise.
Thanks, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question. So does grace period means I can stay around for 60 days after graduation? Say, yeah. So I'm just going to answer this question. So whenever you apply, you complete your program and you apply for OPT and your application is pending, you can remain in the US legally as long as you have that pending application with USCIS. So it's okay to be here. Okay.
I will mention I have a spring student. They graduated back in May. She got an RFE, though, request for evidence, and hers is still technically pending, even though her grace period ended quite a while ago. So as long as you have that pending case, you can legally stay in the US.
Okay, the next question. So if I never used OPT in undergrad and I have a STEM undergrad degree, can I still use that OPT STEM extension?
That is a good question that I completely forgot to answer. Yeah, so we've had students before, let's say you're in an MBA program, which right now is not STEM eligible. You would do post-completion OPT based on the MBA. And then let's say you did an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, you can technically apply for STEM OPT based on that previous degree had you not done it before. The tricky part where that comes in is that the STEM degree has to be from a US institution, has to be earned within the past 10 years, and basically the work would then have to transition from MBA work to chemical engineering work, for example. So it's kind of like sometimes it happens to students where it's a complete job change, which sometimes doesn't work out. But I would say Jennifer and I have done quite a few of those. So I mean, it's totally possible. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've had a number of students who applied on STEM based on a prior degree. So yes,
Yeah.
it's possible. Okay.
Also, I'm sorry, my cat never came and presented. Very rude. It's usually here.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I think that's all the questions we have. I'm just going to go ahead and answer this.
Any other?
Just a quick question, Eric. So my passport, it expires in March 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend renewing it before I apply for OPT?
So I know it gets a bit difficult right now because we've actually had some students where they weren't able to renew it because of the whole COVID-19 situation. So I would try and reach out to your embassy here in the US maybe to see if it's possible. I know quite a few weren't continuing that as of right now. It's kind of been halted, so it can be a little difficult. Usually students who are within that 6-month period when they apply are totally fine. I would say in the past 4.5 years, I've gotten like one RFE stating, please renew your passport first before we continue. I don't, Jennifer, do you agree? I really haven't seen too many issues with this. If it was expiring like within a month, like pre-COVID times, we would definitely say, please renew it first, just so there's no issue.
Yeah, so as long as the passport is valid 6 months into the future, whenever USCIS receives your application, I think you should be fine. You should be good.
It probably wouldn't be 6 months.
Is it going to be less than 6 months?
Yeah, so this is October. I'm not applying in a week at least. And it expires in March 2021.
Okay.
I would say first maybe reach out to your embassy to see the current policies. I know some embassies make you mail your physical passport in. Sometimes you don't. Some of them make you physically go to an appointment, which some might not even have any appointments available right now. So it can be tricky, and I don't think they would hold it. Well, I shouldn't really say that.
Yeah, I had a student whose passport was expired and who had a pending, passport application, who sent his application documents to USCIS, and I think he got approved. He had to write a letter explaining why, his passport was expired. And I mean, he had a valid reason, and he had documentation to show he had applied for renewal, and that was taking too long. So, and he was approved. So if you have a valid reason and if you have documentation to show, then you should be covered.
All right.
For that.
Yeah.
So there is a U.S. Immigration did release, when they released their COVID information, it says if students remain in the U.S. due to COVID and their passport expires, what do they need to do? And the answer says students in this situation should contact their country's embassy or consulate to identify options for passport extension or renewal. That's basically it. It just says contact your embassy. Of course, very vague, but I would try that first, see what they say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, good to see you. Like, I was really surprised. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have more questions. General. So do you need a job offer letter to apply for OPT? And the answer to that is no. Okay.
We usually
No
recommend
job.
applying as soon as you can because you're just applying for the work authorization itself.
Okay, so another question. So if both my undergrad and master degree are in STEM, can the final OPT time be cumulative?
You
No,
mean,
OPT is only for 12 months. I think that's what this question is about,
yep, so
right?
when you apply for post-completion OPT, it'll be based on that degree that you're graduating with. You can never really go back in time to do post-completion for a previous degree. It's just that STEM that you can go back. So I guess when you apply for STEM, you can really do it based on either, but.
Okay, thanks. I think those are all the questions we have here.
Nice. Again, this will be available for recording if you want to come back and see this presentation on our website. It's usually posted within a day or two. You can go back and reference the I-765 information. Again, when you submit your application, we process the I-20 for you. We'll give you the STEM the post-completion OPT I-765 template so you can go through all that. We're happy to check it over for you via email or via a Zoom appointment. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope this was, I know it can be a little boring, but we try to make this a little fun. Happy Friday. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Feel free to email us if you have any more questions. And hope you apply soon. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, have a good weekend. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. The cat is probably sleeping. Usually whenever I start talking, he's like, why are you talking? Let me come find out.
So Bill. Okay, we still have
Oh, I just saw these messages. Oops.
the chat messages.
Yeah, one student said, good to see you, Eric, but I missed it.
Oh,
Now they're gone. Good to see you too. All right, Jennifer, I hope you have a good weekend.
you too.
Thanks for
Take
joining.
care.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.